so much, BA. Yes. Welcome back to the NBA. You were a little winded down the stretch. That's to be expected. How did you cope with that?
I'm a dog.
Ja Morant is back, and he has put the whole league on notice. The Memphis Grizzlies has been struggling, starting out 6-19, and there's a multitudes of reasons why they're starting out this poorly. One of the biggest reasons is the fact that they let go Dillon Brooks, who, in my opinion, I understand that a lot of people do not like him, but the reality is that Dillon Brooks brought that spark defensively. They also don't have Steven Adams, and that's huge as well. And then when you have Steven Adams and Dillon Brooks playing or not being on the roster, and then you have Ja Morant out, it's not the same team that was winning games without him last year or the year or two before. And people having legitimate conversations, not really legitimate, but just conversations on whether or not the team is better with or without him. But Ja Morant is back. He already did his time. He confessed up to what he did. He owned up to what he did. He's still in court now for something else, but he is back. And man, did he put on a show. Ja Morant basically just told us that, hey, I'm still the same person that I once was, right? I'm still a person that will, go downhill. I might not be the strongest. I might not be the guy that's going to bully you down in the post. I might not be the guy that's going to shoot us into the game like a Stephen Curry or a Trae Young. But I will have my way with any defender that you guys can throw at me. Because that's pretty much what happened all night. I mean, he started out the game a little bit slow and a little bit sluggish, but that's to be expected because he has not played an NBA game in 8 months. Right, it's one thing to, be working out every day and trying to stay conditioned and trying to, be in good enough shape. But until you actually play the NBA game, basketball on that professional level, it's a lot more physical than you going up and down the court and practicing by yourself, right? Or maybe even if you have coaches too. But also, you're away from the team. And so, you don't really have that aspect of actually being close and personal with your team outside of the gym and outside of playing basketball. But at the end of the day, Ja Morant came back, and even though he started out kind of slow, which is to be expected, he pretty much ramped up his production towards the third quarter and the fourth quarter by hitting so many clutch and timely buckets. But first, let's talk about the narratives that, was in this game before it even started. Because I'd be remiss to say that, a lot of people did not have much expectations for this Grizzlies roster, them being 6-19, and also the fact that Ja Morant did not play for 8 months. But I will say this one thing, right? Any team looks good versus the New Orleans Pelicans. The New Orleans Pelicans have been a very disappointing team in my eyes. I think that they have all the tools, but it's just young players. You also have Zion not taking the game as serious, but when you have that type of team, the team that's in, a little bit of turmoil, you kind of have a little bit more leeway of coming back and being a little bit more smoother than versus, you going against, let's say, the Boston Celtics or a team that's way more established like the Philadelphia 76ers and, you coming back and trying to have a great game. You're probably not going to have that same game that Ja Morant had when he first came back yesterday. So that's one thing we have to also take into note and take into account. We also have to take into account that they still don't have, Steven Adams, I think he's out for the season for an injury. And then they also don't have Dillon Brooks. And so this team is going to have to heavily rely on Ja Morant to be the player that he once was and continue to be. Because we can see right now that the roster is just not good enough without him. And this is an issue that I see in a lot of other teams' rosters. But I think for this year, right, especially with how historically the Grizzlies has been in terms of how they kind of interact and how they win games or even lose games without Ja Morant. I mean, it was a legitimate thing that people were having conversations on whether or not they were better without Ja Morant. So you can just really tell how good that team really was without Ja Morant. But the case still stands. This year is not the same as last year's or the years previous. This year, they need an alpha dog like him. Desmond Bane's been doing a pretty good job, but that's really only their consistent scorer outside of Ja Morant, and it still will be the same reality. But Ja Morant, even with having all of the weight on his shoulders, coming back from a monumental case, right, and being banned from the NBA, being suspended from the NBA for 25 games, longer than Draymond Green has been, I will say, but I'll digress. He is back, and he is going bananas, right? He is hitting all the shots that he's always normally hit, and I haven't really seen, too much investment into his game. It seems like he's kind of like just perfecting the niche that he's in. But for me, as I see in like a lot of other highlights from John Morant, is that he kind of needs to, open up that shooting game a little bit more, especially the three. He's a good kind of pick and pop guy. He's a little bit, his shooting mechanics is not that clean. But I think with years of, working on it and having more time in the summer to work on your shot, I think he'll be able to do better. But right now he is rolling, and the Pelicans could not stop him on offense at all. I mean, they were trying their best. They were going back and forth. Of course, he had that, 7-point first half. But as any superstar, as any person who, leads the team, that you have to show up in the third and fourth quarter, right? And John Morant did exactly that, scoring the majority of his points in the second half and just taking over the game. You can tell that he was winded towards the end of the game, right? And that's completely understandable, not having to play, 8 months. But even still, when you are the leader of the team and your team relies so much on you, he showed up and he stepped up to the occasion. So it's exciting to see a person who is really reminiscent of like a young Derrick Rose in the way that he's super explosive, probably not as fast or as strong as Derrick Rose, but we haven't really seen a natural high flyer that is able to kind of like lead a team like John Morant outside of Derrick Rose in a long, long time. Of course, many people think of Russell Westbrook, but I'll say like for the new generation, John Morant is definitely that person for us. But right now, like I said before, he is rolling. Now, will the Grizzlies become, a playoff team, maybe a play-in team if, the West just simply just dies down and we see like, the regression to the means as we see like the Utah Jazz not playing well, the New Orleans Pelicans not playing well. We will probably see the Memphis Grizzlies fight and claw towards that play-in spot number 10, and that will probably be the best that they can probably get. But right now you can see the energy in like the Grizzlies camp that they are ecstatic. They are loving it. They feel like they are revigorated. John Morant is going to lead them to the promised land. In my honest opinion, I completely understand. I completely agree with them with the energy and the amount of emotion that John Morant is going to give to your team, because without John Morant, the Grizzlies are terrible this year. And John Morant has to be 100% more mature, 100% more accountable with the wins that they get as well as the losses that they get, because right now it seems like John Morant is the only one that can bring them out of this rut.